Penny Jake, the tribe has spoken.
Fuck you, Kevin.
Aw, fuck you too, sweetie.
I'm JJ, one of the original Tribe of Nerds members. You can catch me on Marvel, Pokemon, and other gaming podcasts.
What up? It's Josh, resident superhero nerd, but I also dabble in the occasional super villain as well.
Some may know me as the Chaos Gremlin, but really I'm just Joe King.
Pikachu, use Bolt Tackle! Good job, Pikachu!
I'm the Tribe of Nerds.
Everybody's in there.
Everyone in there's dead. Sawyer, right behind you, jackass.
I love Jack's baby flashlight, and then Sawyer's like ready.
Yeah.
You really don't think I can catch a fish?
I mean, you haven't really done much so far, so.
I had to prove
You,
myself.
Jake. Jake is on my side.
That's how boars get.
Wow. No,
One of my favorite episodes.
yeah, it was a really good one. Hey everybody, welcome back to the Tribe of Nerds. We are here for episode 4 of Lost, Walkabout. So this was a fun episode, a really good episode. Picked up where episode 3 left off with the character of John Locke. So we're excited to kind of talk about that. So
Michael, do you want to do your fun facts first before we jump into the episode?
I couldn't find many fun facts. The only thing I do have is my weekly ratings, everyone's favorite segment of the podcast. Back up to 18 million, same number as the pilot, so it jumped back up.
It did. It did. I was wondering if you were going to say that one. So, of course, the fun facts I have, it's got to be in the spoiler section. So,
yeah.
I've got a couple that I'm going to say when we get to the specific episode points.
Yeah. All right, perfect. All right, well, let's just jump into this then. So we kind of start off the episode. There's something going on the island that's not going to take us very long to check out what it is. They're not going to make us wait on this one. And they hear some noises coming from the fuselage. Jack and everybody go and check it out. This is probably my favorite part because Jack has his little itty bitty flashlight and Sawyer's like, light it up, let's go. Of course, boars come out. And so they see that there are boars on the island. And so they're realizing that the fuselage, of course, there's dead bodies in there and things like this. Jack is bringing to Saeed and Kate's, attention is like, we got to get rid of this. And Saeed's very upset about this. He said, we don't know about what they would have wanted if they wanted to, they wanted their bodies burned or buried or, things like that. And Jack is just adamant that, even if you bury them, they're going to have to stay. So it's kind of a turmoil here of this kind of first part of what we're seeing, that they're kind of obviously not agreeing. We're all different, walks of life and things like that. But it's kind of the first time that, other than Sawyer, that you're really seeing people kind of start not really agreeing to a point where Saeed kind of walks off and doesn't want anything to do with Jack. So, Jake, what were your kind of first thoughts going into obviously realizing that we've got some great banter here? We've got boars. We've got people arguing. What's going on? Your thoughts here?
Well, so I thought they were wolves at first or something else. And then I'm like, oh, they're boars. Okay. This is interesting. Just stuff that I definitely didn't expect. And then I think you have another great Sawyer line of they thought Sawyer was the one going in the background, and he's like, "It's not me, jackass."
I love him so much. I can't help it. It's so funny.
It's a fair comment. He was looting in there 1 episode ago.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, but he's like right behind you, jackass. Just, I love Sawyer so much.
Yeah.
Michael, Greg, what were your guys' thoughts kind of just in this opening scene here?
I do like the the discussion of what to do with these bodies. It leads to like quite a philosophical discussion of what do they want to be done with them, and do we have the time to be, deciding what we do in terms of burial or whatever. But it's ultimately, Jack, is we need to be pragmatic about it and just clear the fuselage because we now have animals attacking us. One also little thing from the beginning of this episode, I don't know if it was a recap or if they played it as well, if it like led right in, but we see Locke's shoes, and it's the first little clue of something where you see that the bottoms of his shoes are completely unworn and clean. So it's just little nice things like that where when you look back, knowing the reveal that we're going to get at the end of the episode of ultimately what Locke was like before the island.
Yeah, no, and that did start. It was just such a quick thing that I just was like, let's just jump into what was happening because, like, we'll get that more later in the more of the flashbacks. But, no, it's you brought that up, and I was like, I never even would have thought about it like that. Greg, what were your thoughts?
I really liked it. Like it gave kind of the show a new feel a little bit, just because it was more realistic. Something you wouldn't think that they would have to deal with in a TV show. They would just kind of disappear or something.
Yeah. No, I mean, I can't imagine, like, if we're, like, thinking about us as being characters on this island, like, to actually think about, like, oh, now we have to actually, like, deal with these dead people, like, and they're strangers to you, you know what I mean? But also you got to have those, like, internal feelings about them. Obviously, our first little flashback that we see Locke talking on the phones, line secure, Colonel, and all these things. So you're starting to wonder that, again, what like Kate, we're getting a flashback that's off of the island, off of the plane.
Mm-hmm.
You're starting to wonder, who is this Locke character? Is he like in the army? Is this like their rendezvous? What are they talking about? So Jake, what were your first initial like guesses on to who we might be introducing ourselves to, like Locke? Who did we think that was or what were your guesses?
So when he was being referred to as Colonel, I thought he was doing, and he was at a desk, I was like, is he like doing like accounting for the army or something? That was kind of my first thoughts. And then here, no, he just likes to be called the Colonel. And it was fun to see him playing Risk as well. I did notice that. So I love Risk. So I thought that was fun. And of course, he has a really nasty coworker that bullies him, and that just wasn't fun to see, especially now knowing more context as to what was actually happening there.
Like while we're on the flashback, let's talk about that, because what a dick.
Yeah.
For no reason. Like, this poor guy's in a wheelchair and he's just like taking the piss out of him. It's like, you're gonna go on a walkabout, you? It's like, why is he so unnecessarily mean to Locke?
Yeah.
You even get him before even to that part. Like, you're getting him like not 12:30, not like I want this in you. So he's just like, he really tears into him, which obviously, like, I don't know if this is like something people normally think of, but like, how demeaning is that as to Locke, as you are clearly his elder. This kid's like 20 and you're listening, you have to take orders from somebody like that. I'd be like so annoyed with that. Greg, what were your thoughts of this flashback?
I actually really like that part because it shows a completely different side of Locke than what we've seen so far. He's been a fairly dominant alpha male in the show, and this is him being as low as he can get.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, the contrast between Locke on the island and Locke in his life off the island is so stark. Right. It's like we see him with his suitcase full of knives that he launches at Sawyer's head, and then we cut to him being, just this sad, meek man, and his conversation on the phone later. There's so much in this flashback where you're just like, God, this poor man, but he seems to be living his best life on the island, so it's all working out.
Yeah, most definitely. I mean, you brought up the case of knives. That's where we're going to jump into next to kind of dive more into this episode here. Obviously, the next day after, the boars have come out Everybody's like, what's going on? We see Hurley and Sawyer are fighting over peanuts. Come to find out that they have eaten all of the food. There is no food left now because they were expecting to be rescued at this point. So nobody was preparing ahead of time. So now the kind of the chaos of that. And so that's where Locke, because like he throws it and it lands in the seat next to Sawyer. I love Jack going like, you either have really bad aim or really good aim, because it was like, were you trying to hit Sawyer or not hit Sawyer? But then he's talking about, well, we have to hunt, and these were the piglets, and let's go after the mom, and we're going into the jungle. And then of course Saeed, they're working on their secret project that they lied about from the last episode. So he gives Kate an antenna to try and boost the signal and things like that, and to find where this power source might be coming from. And then, on the hunt, obviously, Michael is with them. And this is kind of where we're getting a little bit more of Michael now, too. He wants, because Walt and Locke keep hanging out. He, again, thinks this is weird. Why is this old man hanging out with my kid? He's telling Walt, like, let me go hang out with your friend. Let me learn more about him, as any parent would. Mm-hmm. So now we're kind of getting a little bit more into Michael a little bit, and hearing kind of his story. He talks about, he just had to pick him up 2 weeks ago, and things like that. But I think what's also funny is he's still going to Sun. This is probably one of my why are we going to the person that does not speak English? Like, there are how many other people on this beach that you could have been like, hey, can you watch my kid? But he goes to Sun, and I think that's kind of an interesting, because obviously he must feel like a connection. Maybe he really just loved seeing her boobs in the last episode, and he's like, let me talk to this woman. I don't know what his thoughts were, but that was kind of a fun interaction where she's like, yeah, you're an idiot. Like, go away. Like, you know what I mean? But yeah, so they go off into the jungle there. And then, of course, in another piece of the flashback, we get more into, who John is, and that's where you guys got kind of where he's in the cafeteria and things like that. So what were your guys' thoughts of kind of the Michael joining? He hasn't been around. Jake, what were your thoughts going into this?
Yeah, I'm kind of liking Michael more. I think that him just being like the dad with the son and trying to do what's best for his son, but still like, he's trying to protect his son and do everything for him still. So I like him. And unfortunately, like, he's gonna get hurt in this episode as well. But I'm interested to see more. I kind of want to see him and his son, like, what their backstory is. I'm assuming, obviously, we're gonna get that, like we are for all these characters, or these main characters. But
yeah, I mean, so yeah, Michael said that he only came into his life 2 weeks ago when his mother died. So that's another thing where it's kind of explaining this distance between them, and they don't really know each other yet. And can we just take a second to say how brave this kid is?
Yes.
Like, his mother died, 2 weeks ago? He's just had a horrific plane crash on a deserted island, and he's just chilling with Sun.
Yeah.
And Vincent.
Yeah, testing out toothpaste. It's good.
Yeah. And she's teaching him how to brush his teeth with a leaf, right? Or a stick. Yeah.
It's like aloe or something, I think.
It looked like aloe. I know. I never thought of aloe as like toothpaste, but well, I mean, hey. I mean, what's kind of fun here is that, again, we're seeing some, Sawyer things coming in, but we're also we're getting little bits and pieces here. Like, another piece that I kind of left out, but should be touched on, is now we're getting Claire. She comes up to Jack and she's saying, hey, Jack, like, this people, Kristin and Steve, like, I mean, I loved it because my name's in there, but whatever. But like, they were sitting behind me and they were planning a wedding and they just look so in love. Like, maybe we should like have a memorial. And Jack's like, I don't want to do any of that. Like, and she's like, well, maybe I'll do it. And he's like, sure, do it. So like, we're getting, even though the episodes aren't focusing on certain characters, we're still getting little bits and pieces of them. Mm-hmm. Even Boone's coming up to Jack and saying, hey, Rose is over there sitting on the island, by herself, hasn't really eaten or hadn't had anything to drink. You saved her life. You should probably go and check on her, and Jack's like, I don't want to do that either. It's like, geez, Jack, what do you want to do right now? Nothing? Like, put your feet up. What are you doing? You were all gung-ho about being like in charge here. And now you're just like, not.
Right.
I think we see that Jack isn't naturally fitting into the leader role. He doesn't really want all this weight on his shoulders, and yeah, he's just like, Clay, you can do it. I don't have to be in charge of everything. And I think he's just stressed. He's got so much on his plate.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I want to jump back a little bit to where they were talking about their food shortage and stuff. Like I said, the first time I watched this, I was in college and I was really inebriated during this episode. I thought they were about to start eating the freaking bodies out of the plane. Like, I thought they were seriously going to go into cannibal mode. And I was like, oh my God, dude, this is insane.
Real Lord of the Flies, yeah.
That's actually really funny you mentioned that, Jake, because
I know. I'm like, I will be writing that down.
yeah, Lord of the Flies was almost the namesake of this episode in reference of Locke's boring job. They were originally going to call it Lord of the Files, and then they went with Walkabout.
Yeah, that would have been clever too, but Walkabout just fit. I mean, again, the spiritual journey that Locke is trying to go on, to, I guess, give himself some purpose in life. So,
yeah. Also, I mean, also kind of a noteworthy moment here is when Jack does go check on Rose, because he eventually does. He realizes that Boone was being truthful. I should go and actually check on this poor woman that I just saved, and maybe, you know, she's obviously depressed and things like that. Of course, she's over there. We see her with her husband's ring on her necklace. And so they're talking about what he said, Bernard is his name. So her talking about how his fingers swell, and that's why she has his wedding ring, and he, you know, he tells her that, hey, we're about to have a memorial service, and she's like, oh, okay, I'll get up off the beach for that. I want to be there. And he's like, well, maybe you want to talk about Bernard. And she's like, it's not dead. And he's like, lady, he was in the tail section of the plane, it broke off. And she's like, well, they're probably thinking that about us. And that, I mean, it brings a question is like, I think Jack realizes here is like, well, we found like the cockpit and like, but nobody's ever thought to like look for the other pieces of this plane here. Like, let's, you know, obviously they're afraid of the jungle because of whatever, but it poses a question that I think you can even see on Jack's face of like, oh, it's true. Like, we haven't really thought about where these other pieces of the plane are. Jake, what were your thoughts there?
Yes, so I thought this was interesting. We haven't gotten too much of Rose in the last 3 episodes, just because, I mean, clearly she's been sitting on a beach and doing her own thing this whole time.
She's just having a little powwow by herself.
Yeah, so, I mean, I thought this was a good conversation. We get a little more of this character who's been very quiet, and again, like, we had a little bit of her with Jack in the first episode when they flash back to, you know, that moment between the two of them. It makes me think, okay, her saying her husband isn't dead, is that going to come into play in the future? Because now I'm thinking that might come into play. That there somehow could be survivors on the tail half of the plane, even though that's a bit crazy, but considering we've seen some really weird stuff so far, anything can happen probably.
I mean, yeah, it's no more unrealistic than, I mean, the fuselage section that our survivors, the front and the back broke off, and somehow they're all okay. So yeah, I guess it's not beyond the realms of possibility. That scene with Rose and Jack is, apart from the big final scene that we'll get to, is like my favorite scene of the episode. I love when Rose says to him that you don't need to keep your promise to me, that you'll keep me company till my husband gets back from the bathroom. I'm letting you off the hook. It's just a really sweet scene between them, and also just a nice moment for Jack as he's just trying to comfort this woman who's, you know, clearly in shock and not taking care of herself. And he also mentions, Jake, that he didn't choose to become a doctor. It was just part of the family business. So that's another thing that we have lingering of how Jack got into that.
Yeah, I did hear that part, so that's interesting, and I'm guessing that'll come up a little later, but I mean, you know, he clearly is still good at what he does, so yeah.
Yeah, Greg, anything to add here on this part before we go into kind of more of the flashbacks a little bit before we go to the finals?
No, you can go ahead.
Okay, sorry, I thought you said something else. So then flashing back to Locke, we see him talking to, he had just, his friend kind of outed him in front of Randy about Helen. And so, he's giving him crap for that, which he gives him crap for everything. But we see him talking to Helen, and he's like, yeah, I got something to tell you. Like, I'm going on the walkabout. She's like, yeah, you've talked about it forever. And he's like, but I bought 2 tickets. And she's like, yeah, this isn't going to work. And so now we're starting to be like, wait, what's happening? I thought this is his girlfriend. Like, I'd be excited to go to Australia. I mean, minus the giant spiders and things. But she's like, I mean, I do this with all of my customers, and now you're starting to like get more into it. Which I think is a little bit crazy to see that we were led to believe that Helen is his girlfriend, wife, whatever. And come to find out, he was doing a call-in service, and she's like, I have to go. I'm going to have to charge you again. She abruptly hangs up on him, where you see him just like kind of having that inner turmoil, and kind of almost a breakdown, if you will, where we don't see so much the meek John anymore, like you guys had mentioned. Now there's starting to become some anger, and you know what I mean? So I think we're starting to see a lot of different sides of Locke. Jake, what were your thoughts of this kind of flashback where we're seeing more sides of Locke than we ever have?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't expect that he was just having a conversation with like a call center lady, and that like she was just going to reject him like that because, she's literally just doing her job, and this wasn't like how Locke wanted it to be, which was a relationship. So, I mean, I think it could be something to where Locke maybe lost his wife at one point or something, and maybe this is a way, like, he's trying to get some of that back, and it obviously, he's going to think it's more than it actually was. So I don't know. There's theories. Again, I mean, it seems like he just lives alone. He's mistreated by his coworkers and his boss. So like, yeah.
It's just so sad. Like, he just seems like a very lonely man, and he's trying to reach out and have this human connection, and just watching it all fall apart for him, and how excited he was to tell her about the walkabout, and she said that you've been talking about for months, and how ultimately this walkabout ends up not happening for him. It's just, you watch these flashbacks and you're just like, you can't help but root for this guy. He's had such a miserable life from what we've seen. I did also, just while we're on flashbacks, want to say something about the previous one, where Randy's berating him for absolutely no reason. He mentions Norman Croucher, double amputee who climbed Mount Everest, as clearly someone that's a big inspiration for Locke. Slight continuity error. Norman Croucher is a real person, but he never climbed Mount Everest. He climbed Kilimanjaro and the Himalayas. So do your research, Locke. Yeah, I think that's such an inspirational person. He's also still alive, and he's 84 years old. So go the real life John Locke.
That's awesome. I mean, Gregg, do you have anything in this flashback that you noticed about Locke that you wanted to add?
Not really. It was just mostly that it was more tearing down of his character, I guess, to rebuild him at the end of the episode, because he becomes the badass of the episode again.
Yeah. Well, let's get into that. So they are on, they're out there doing their hunting for boar. They stumble upon the boar. Of course, Michael's an idiot and doesn't realize that, like, when you're hunting, you should be quiet. And so the boar comes out, of course, attacks them. Locke pulls Kate out of the way. They fall. Michael gets, impaled on his leg. It takes Locke a minute to kind of get back up here as Kate's taking care of Michael, but he's got the determination. Of course, he says this quote many times in the episode: "You can't tell me what I can't do."
Yeah.
It's kind of like the quote of the episode. So they decide to separate and part ways. He's going after the boar. He's determined. And Kate needs to get Michael back for some medical attention. Along their trek, obviously, she's like, oh, I have the antenna. I've got to fix this. So they stop and she climbs a tree to set up this antenna. Meanwhile, she sees, what do we see? What we've been trying to figure out this whole time. This thing that's moving in the trees, big, whatever it is. And of course, it scares her. She drops the antenna. Poor Saeed, he's done all this work and he has He's just like, you can tell the frustration with Saeed as well at this point. But she drops it and she sees that it is headed right towards Locke. So when, of course, they get back to the beach, she lets Saeed know, I'm sorry, I just ruined all of your hard work and do it again. And he's just like, I don't really want to. And she's like, no, do it again. But then she goes, of course, to Jack and lets him know that, Locke is not around. Meanwhile, we also have to mention my least favorite person of all time, Shannon, is over here. Boone's like, you're a moron. You can't do anything for yourself. And she's like, I'm going to catch a fish. No, what you meant to say is you're going to be completely stupid, flirt your way through it, and make other people do it, which is also, we see a really good interaction with Hurley and with Charlie in the ocean and things like that. And Charlie, of course, does bring the fish to Shannon. Boone, of course, lays into her, apologizes to Charlie, and Charlie's sitting there like, what is happening here? And she's like, but I did catch a fish. No, you didn't. Sit down. Go tan yourself again. What I'm kind of throwing so much in here before we wrap this up and get to our final flashback and our the final part of the episode. Jake, what were I know that you finally have come onto my side with dumb Shannon here, but what else were you thinking about all these moments that are leading up to this?
Yeah, I mean, I said it earlier, sucks with Michael getting hurt. Hopefully he's able to recover and this doesn't end up being another Air Marshal situation. But I mean, he just has a leg wound, so it's not as severe as that was. And then I'm liking Shannon less and less, because she, as her brother says, she can't fend for herself, and she literally is having Charlie and Hurley do all the work for her, instead of doing it herself. So that was annoying to me. And then as far as whatever's, pushing through the woods and everything, and Locke sees whatever it is. So I'm still curious what that's going to be. I think we joked about on the recording that's like a dinosaur. It could be that. It could be something completely out of left field. So I'm interested to see what we find out about what it is.
It's an even bigger polar bear. No, I'm just kidding.
The monster polar bear, yeah. We also see that when the monster reaches Locke, he seems to get a glimpse of it. We see it part the trees from its perspective, and he has quite a horrified look on his face. So we could have he does later say that he didn't see it, but it seemed to me like he certainly did. Maybe we have our first character having a glimpse of the monster.
Perhaps.
I got a couple of things written down on this area. First thing I got written down is Shannon really is useless. Like, what the hell is the point of her entire existence at that point?
Thank you. Michael, you're getting outnumbered at this point.
You really are.
It's fine.
And then Rose and Jack's talks were great, but also he's kind of the asshole of the episode. Like, every time he opens his mouth, it's kind of a dick move.
Jack?
Jack, a little bit. Like, to Rose, she's like, your husband's dead, dude. Like, he's dead.
I thought he was being really sweet.
And then he was a dick to Claire, like, and this is where I started noticing, like, Jack's kind of a cockblock too, because every time Kate's with anybody else, like she was touching on Saeed, he comes out of the woods, Kate,
grabs that face.
Oh my gosh, I love that. Not Jack being a cockblock. That's
kind of is though. Like, he always does. Every time she's with anybody else, he's like, "Hey, come talk to me."
He's checking up on her. He's being a good doctor. I need to be the Jack defender. I need to be the Shannon defender. I'm going to defend Shannon. Yes, she got the fish. She used what she had.
She didn't though.
She did. She got Charlie to get it for her. Why get something yourself if you can manipulate some idiot into getting it for you? And that would
now you leave Charlie and his sweetheart alone.
if Shannon came to me and asked me to get a fish, I'd have gone and got a fish, and I'd have been the idiot like Charlie. It's like who ended up with the fish? Shannon did.
But also, you love at this moment too. Like that, I have to throw this out there. Like now you have the fish. What are you gonna do with it? You know, and you see her like toss it even over to Boone. Like she's like, "Yep, here's my fish. Now like cook it for me." She is just again completely useless. Please just go paint your nails, do whatever you're doing. Like I don't. Why are we focusing on her? I don't care. Like show me more Sawyer. Thank you.
Focusing on her because she's great.
So kind of leading in to this final like ending of the show here. We're back in our flashback. We see Locke in Australia and he's arguing with the guy like, put me on the bus, like I'm here. And he's like, well, you lied to us about you. And he's like, I didn't lie. And he's like, by omission. And we're like, what's happening here? Why is he not allowed to go on this walkabout that he's so excited about? And so now you're starting to wonder, like, what is he talking about his condition? Like, because he's old? Does he have a heart condition? Like, why is he not able to go on this walkabout? And the guy's like, no, I'm sorry, dude. Like, it's not happening. We're going to, like, send you back to Sydney. And he's walking out. And as he's walking out, we see the big reveal. Dun, dun, dun. Locke is in a wheelchair. And he is, he is not, this isn't, like, just, like, I'm not in a wheelchair because I have a hard time walking. Like, he's paralyzed. Like, he is not, he's not been doing it. He talks about, I've had this for 4 years. Like, he brings up these moments where, like, you realize that this has been an issue. So, of course, that's, like, the big reveal. Then, of course, they bring it back to how our episode started of him waking up on the beach, wiggling his toes, kind of in shock of, like, oh, my gosh, like, I'm able to wiggle my toes now, and I'm putting my shoe on, and, oh, Jack's yelling at me to come help, and now I can run over there and help. Like, all these kind of, like, I mean, Michael, you caught it, like, later, going back to when everybody's running away from the rain, like his rebirth here a little bit on the island. And so that was kind of the massive reveal. So before I go into like the ending of the episode, Jake, what were your thoughts when you finally realized that he was paralyzed and now he's not anymore?
Yeah, I didn't notice the signs initially. I think it'd be interesting to go back and watch and see the signs of him being in a wheelchair. Like you guys mentioned, his boss literally is incredulous that he's gonna walk around on the walkabout. But yeah, I mean it was interesting there, and then I'm like, okay, so the plane crash then fixes his paralysis like miraculously. There has to be something else going on because that's just a bit weird. I don't think things work that way.
Yeah, the hard impact. He's just fine. Yeah, this is one of the big questions and the big mysteries that we're going to have, to deal with at some point. And I mean that whole scene. Just once again, we mentioned it in episode 1, but Michael Giacchino, that one of the greatest themes that he composes for the entire show it's called "Locked Out Again." That music as Locke reveals himself in the wheelchair, and we have this scene that goes from heartbreak and tragedy as he's just his entire world crumbling around him to his rebirth on the island, and he's just the happiest man. And this is the first time, Jake, we can talk to you about something we discussed in the spoiler section, where we talked about during those first 3 episodes when we see Locke occasionally. He's the only person that's just so happy. He's sat out in the rain, like Kristin said. He's got an orange peel in his mouth and smiling at people. Everyone else is stressed, and this is like a new life for Locke. This is his best day ever, and it's just such a triumphant scene. It's so beautiful. I cry every time.
Yeah, I mean, he got to do his walkabout after all, being stranded on an island. So
yeah.
Walkabout for the boar. Greg, what are your thoughts of this big reveal?
I had no idea the first time. Like I was still confused even after I had saw the wheelchair until I like had watched it and gotten to the point where he was standing up again, and I kind of put 2 and 2 together. I told you I was really, really inebriated the first time. But I think it was a great character reveal. It put a lot of depth into his character, like right off the bat. Like it makes you want more John Locke just to figure out what's going on with him.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think that brings it in too, that it's like now you do want more Locke. Like, well, he said 4 years, so obviously he wasn't born like this. So like, what happened? Now you're really starting to like crave these flashbacks where before they were flashback, they're just like giving you a little bit. Now you're like, oh, I want it. I want more. I want more.
And like you said, Greg, not noticing it the first time, I don't think, inebriated or not, the reason this is such a fantastic episode is that the best reveals are hidden in plain sight, but done so well that you don't see it. And anyone that says they saw this coming is lying to themselves. Nobody saw it, and it is so obvious. I had no idea. So I did a rewatch of Lost with my family, watching it for the first time. The members of my family that hadn't seen it, we watched it, and watching this episode was the most stressful experience of my life, where I was sat there going like, it's so obvious. They keep mentioning it. Stop looking at your feet, Locke. You're making it so obvious. But it's just so well planted that you do not see it coming. And that reveal is just phenomenal. I cannot talk about it enough. It's so good.
Yeah. No, I mean, we even mentioned it too when we were watching it. It's like it's so like there's so many things. Like you mentioned his shoes like never having, like you can tell they weren't even walked on. Randy telling him like literally you're gonna go on a walkabout on foot. Like he literally says that, you know what I mean? We do always see him sitting down. We haven't seen him stand up in these flashbacks yet. So it's fun for our perspective now to see it, that it's so blatantly obvious, but to see it coming from like Jake and other people that have never seen it is like, how do you not notice this? But like it was so well done, because I know I didn't want to either. All right, so now we're gonna wrap up this little episode. Obviously they are burning the fuselage. They waited till night. Obviously they're trying to get people to see it because they still have not been rescued. Claire is leading the eulogies, if you will, as best she can. I love the part where she's like, he wore corrective glasses or corrective lenses. It's like, oh my gosh, how bad. And then like even like, oh, you know, she was an organ donor. Oh, I guess, well, would have been, you know, and like these things that she just is throwing out there because she's trying so hard to make this as beautiful as it is. And so everybody, of course, is gathered there. The big thing before we even get to the night is a kind of another big reveal that leaves us with a question. Is as Jack is walking back with Rose, he sees this person in a suit, and it's like you can tell he's a little bit shocked here. And then of course he sees it again when he's talking with Kate, runs off into the jungle. And you know, nothing's there. Of course, Locke does return. He has not been killed by whatever this thing is. And he brought the boar. So obviously they're going to be eating for some time. Michael, I think, even joked like they're eating for a week. And so that brings us back to the nighttime here where we're finishing out this episode. We also see Charlie sneak away. We saw him sneak away earlier when Shannon busted him a little bit, but he is running low on his stash. What's going to happen there? But we also see that Jack is missing from this. Kate asks, you know, Charlie, have you seen Jack? He's not there. And we're kind of ending this on a note that it's, you know, it's a sad note, but we've gotten so much from the depth of this, you know, episode, that it's kind of like a more brilliant ending, I think, as far as episodes go, and even future ones in the past, that it's like you've just given us so much, and like they end it on almost a very serene, where you're like your mind's still wrapping around the fact that you just found out this man can walk again, you know. So I think that was a brilliant like portrayal of how to end this episode, where it's just kind of more of the serene moment. Of course, Locke saying he didn't see anything, we already talked on that, but I don't know. What were your guys' thoughts on this ending here?
I feel like the ending was the best part of the whole episode. Like, I get the whole episode was Locke centric, except that part. I think the character development and the growth of everybody was so extreme during that part. Like you see how much of a junkie Charlie is, because he's sneaking away at essentially a funeral to go dope up real quick. You've got Jack, who's missing, who doesn't want to have anything to do with any kind of memorial service or funeral. Like, you've got Rose there, you've got all the people standing there. Claire's trying to make something nice out of a bad situation. You've got a lot of things going on all at once.
Yeah,
I really love the quiet character moments in this show, and the memorial section, like for the passengers that didn't make it is just so sweet. And like you mentioned, Chris and Claire just trying her best with the very little information she actually has to give these people a send off. I think it's such a nice moment. And then I do laugh every time when Charlie comes staggering up behind Claire, high as a kite, just this glazed over look in his eyes, just like. We also mentioned in the reactions that Charlie's bag is getting quite low, so he's probably not making smart decisions right now. I do have a question for Jake, though. We mentioned the figure on the beach that Jack saw, so I'm curious of your thoughts about that.
All right. Well, I said in the reactions that I noticed the suit, and it reminded me of what the air marshal was wearing, and I almost thought it was like sort of the ghost of Jack's decision because he had to put the air marshal out of his misery, and so I almost think it's sort of something like that, and that he's either hallucinating or seeing things, because you see in movies all the time of like someone dies because this character made a decision, and so they'll see like the ghost of that decision, the ghost of their past, and so that's what I'm thinking, but it might just be something different, which is fine. But that's what I'm gonna go with for now, and we'll see what happens with it.
It's such a striking visual as well. It's like the show is just so good at just hitting you out of left field. So I've seen the show a million times, but I forget exactly when things happen. So we were all just watching, and it's just this scene between Jack and Kate, and then all of a sudden there's this figure on the horizon, and all three of us just went and like leaned in. It's such a shocking and unexpected sight of who the hell is this guy? And he's wearing white shoes with his suit. It's like, why?
Yeah. I mean, I think again, we're unlocking so much, like, no pun intended with the Locke thing, but we're unlocking so many things in this episode, which is again why, like I mentioned, that this like final scene is just so kind of a serene moment, because you've got so many things that are going through your head. Like, how is Locke walking again? Who is this random dude that just popped up? You know what I mean? We've got questions that, like Rose brought up, is there a tail section? Like, are they alive? You know what I mean? There's just so many questions going on in your brain about this episode that's why I think that final scene is so brilliantly done, because you're still even unpacking things of like, you got Charlie, what's he gonna do when his stuff runs out? So like, I just think that was such a beautiful moment that they had. And again, we're getting, even though we're not focusing on these other characters as much, we're getting little bits and pieces of them. And so you can tell that Claire's obviously kind of coming into her motherly role a little bit, like, let's do some things. So it's fun to see that for sure.
For sure. Do we want to hit the episode rankings, or does anybody else have anything?
Episode rankings, and we gotta do favorite and least favorite character.
Episode ranking is gonna be easy.
All right, Jake, start us off with episode rankings.
All right, well, this one is the best so far, I think. I mean, I thought this one was fantastic in terms of the storytelling and the character development. I think it's definitely Walkabout, then the pilot, then Tabula Rasa as my personal rankings. So,
Michael?
Yeah, I think, Lost has fantastic episodes all throughout this series, but I wouldn't be surprised if Walkabout remains in the top 10 when we wrap this up here in 10 years' time, whenever we get around.
10 years' time.
Yeah. No, we're doing good. We'll be okay. I think Walkabout is absolutely number one of the episodes we've got so far. It's just so damn good. Every time I recommend Lost to someone, I normally think the pilot will grab people, but if they're not super into it, I always say at least give it till episode 4. If you're not into it by episode 4, it's probably not for you.
Most certainly. Gregg?
You can't disagree with that. Like, it's episode 4, pilots, and Telerosa, or whatever it is.
Yeah. Yep. Same for me. I think all of us agree. But I agree with, like, Michael, just like kind of what you're talking about too, is like, it's one of those episodes that for sure everybody needs to at least give it to 4. If you're not hooked at 4, you're doing something wrong. Like, for sure, this is definitely not the show for you. So I like that you said that. Jake, favorite character, least favorite character.
All right, favorite character, I'll go John Locke. I mean, this episode is all about him. I think like that it has to be him for this episode. Least favorite, I'll go Shannon and join Kristin's
Yes.
group. Shannon haters.
Gregg?
So I'm actually going with Sawyer for my favorite because his quips in this episode are timeless.
Yeah.
And Randy is the worst.
Okay.
Correct.
The worker, yeah.
All right, Michael.
My favorite character is Shannon. She used her initiative. She was
That is a lie.
What? No.
He is not your favorite character of this.
She's my favorite character in the entire show. It's my list, Kristin. I can do what I want.
Well, I think you need to. I think you fell down and bumped your head. You need to go back.
Okay. She's not, but I do like Shannon. I'll be the defender of Shannon. Yeah, I think this is Locke's episode. This is our big introduction to him, and I just think, we talked in episode 1 about our thoughts on the flashback, and Kristin not saying you didn't feel too sure about it. I think this episode and even the kid episode before, this is where it's like how important these flashbacks are, and this Locke flashback is just an absolute banger. It's amazing, and John Locke's a fantastic character, and Terry O'Quinn, shout out to Terry O'Quinn because he's so damn good. So yeah, it has to be John Locke for this episode. I would like to say that Charlie didn't stay on top of your list for very long, Jake.
He's kind of fallen off.
Oh, poor Charlie. So I have to agree. Like Terry O'Quinn made, like, he's just fantastic. Like you mentioned, like he really does the dang thing. But I have to go with Gregg Sawyer. It's just you get more and more from him every episode, and he's still not like the main focus here. He's very rarely popping up, but he's sticking in your mind because of those quick, like, one-liners and stuff right behind you, jackass, like, so I just hit, and it's just the comedy of it, like where you kind of need this in this very serious show where you're learning all these things. It's just like those random, like, one things to get me laughing. Yeah. And I mean, no surprise, Shannon, like, go away. Just go away.
I'm with Gregg. My least favorite was Randy. Like, what a dick. While we're on rankings and stuff, I will say I'm putting the rankings in the comment section below. So if you want to let us know your rankings of episodes and your favorite characters, least favorite characters, let us know in the comments.
Yeah, most definitely. Also, we mentioned too in the spoiler, but I think we should mention it here. If you have questions that are not spoiler related, ask them in the comments and we will address them. We will talk about them here on the podcast. So if you have a question, if you're a first time watcher like Jake, like, join along for the ride here. And if you're not, then stick around for the spoiler section because it's even better.
Yeah, I definitely would love more feedback from the listeners for any of our series, but definitely for Lost here. So, all right. Well, with that, we will see you all next time on the Tribe of Nerds.
All right, so we are here for the spoiler section. Just like you saw us kick Jake out. If you have never seen Lost, or you don't want spoilers, leave now. Like, this is your time to go. So, like, shoo. Go. Are you gone? Okay, good. All right, here we go. So yeah, lots of things to get into in Walkabout here as spoilers. Where do you guys want to start?
Oh.
Like, where do you start with the spoiler section of Walkabout?
I mean, we should start with the main character of the episode and John Locke. John Locke's story is such a tragic one, and I feel like this seems like such a triumphant moment for Locke, but it's kind of the beginning of a real misunderstanding on Locke's part about his place in things. And this, and totally understandable. He's crashed on the island and he's been healed, and he has this absolute deep-rooted belief in himself that he has a destiny here, he is special, and it ultimately ends in a lot of manipulation and not really understanding what his place in any of this is. So it's a great episode for Locke, but it leads him down a very dark path.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's just kind of it for an audience member, you're feeling so uplifted for this moment, like you mentioned in the podcast here. But yes, I mean, ultimately, we're about to start seeing him kind of just unravel. It's about to like get really messy and really quickly. I mean, the main thing that we have to talk about is obviously we know how he got paralyzed, which is
Yeah.
another part of the tragic story. We're not going to go into too many details about it, but like just knowing what Jake's about to watch of finding out that it's done to him, like it's not like an accident. I mean, it is an accident, but it's not really an accident. It was like forcefully done for a purpose. And so, I mean, what are your guys' thoughts? Where do we think Jake's gonna go? I mean, because there's so many things you could have been in a car accident, could have done that. You know what I mean? Like, there's so many things that you could think about. Obviously, we know it's not. He wasn't born with it because he says 4 years. Shout out to the numbers, guys. 4 years, 4, 8, 15. You know, so 4 years that he's lived with this. So I don't know. I mean, I feel like in this moment, it's like I can't wait to see Jake's face when he actually realizes why he's paralyzed. It's crazy.
Yeah, by the hands of maybe the most despicable man in the world. We'll get to, and this is also going to be something that they're not going to reveal for a very long time, and it's something that is going to be teased, and they trick the audience quite a lot, where they make you think that, oh, this is how he got in the wheelchair, and then it's not, and it's not going to be, until a couple of seasons time that we actually get that. So yeah, Jake's got a lot of time to dwell on this one.
Well, and I know that for me, that was really frustrating, Greg. I don't know if you'll agree with me on this, but like now that we're like knowing that we're getting this stuff, I'm like, when are we like the next like Lost episode Locke episode, I was like, oh my gosh, are we gonna find out? Oh, okay, we didn't find out. Okay,
Nope.
next Locke episode. We're gonna find out. Oh,
Nope.
no, we're not gonna find out. So I don't know. I was really this is almost the moment where I love that Lost did this as like now that it's over and seeing like what it was being led up to, but also this was me watching it as a first time viewer getting really frustrated because I'm like, answer the questions. Like I'm having so many, like that's where I think that this started for me of having that frustration of Lost is always giving us new questions, but they're not answering shit.
Yeah.
Help me out. Greg, what are your thoughts?
See, I think Michael can agree with me on this. Like old school wrestling is the best wrestling. When they had storylines that lasted for years and years, stuff that went on like that. And so we were prepped for stuff like this. Like we've been doing this for a long time.
Yeah, that's such a good comparison. Absolutely, yeah. Look, Hogan, Savage, they built that shit for a year. Yeah, I agree. I think all Lost fans, even the most die-hard Lost fans in the world, we can all say that we felt frustrated at times in terms of when are we going to get these answers. But now knowing the whole story, I love the slow reveal of these things. I've got time. I can wait till season 3. I think it's a wonderful journey that we go on, and we do get these answers. We just got to have a bit of patience.
That's the best part about Lost is it goes so deep into every little detail. You can watch it so many times. Like most of us have watched it like at least a dozen times.
108.
You're still finding new stuff every single time.
Yeah, I mean that's what because I mean I've said I don't know what it is on this rewatch that I'm like picking up on the numbers and I never picked up before. Like I mentioned that he said he was paralyzed for 4 years. Also, when we see him talking to Helen, which we're going to get to in a second here, he said that we've been talking for like she's like for a couple of months, and he's like 8 months. Like, and he says it like it's so. I've never once, and I've seen this so many times, never once have been like, oh my gosh, these numbers were everywhere. Like things that we picked up on, you know what I mean? Like we know that there are a few things that were very obviously in your face, but like it's just even in these. I don't know what it is about this rewatch, but I'm like infatuated with the fact that these numbers were everywhere. It's crazy.
I think doing it for the podcast. It's giving us a reason to really dig down into the details and notice these things. So yeah, as someone who's watched the show so many times, I'm just loving getting to go through it with new eyes and do it in a new way. It's like getting to experience the show for the first time again, recording it for the podcast. So yeah, you mentioned Helen as well. So that's obviously going to be not that Helen. This is like a substitute Helen, pardon the pun. We'll get the substitute in season 6, episode 4. But we get the real Helen in Locke's life, and this is someone that he has replaced Helen with, which we talked about before we started recording. You want to mention it now, Kristin? That Jake was pretty damn close.
It was so like I don't know. Hopefully my face didn't like show anything when he said that, but I was like, the fuck? Like, I was like, I cannot even believe that you're sitting here this close. Like, but yeah, no, I mean, it's so funny too, because I even like forget that there was the replacement Helen, that even when we were watching, I was like, man, they really did a horrible job, because that's not Katie Seagal's like, her voice. And then I was like, oh wait, I forgot we have a replacement Helen. Like, even me forgetting that part. But yeah, it's very like, he said maybe his wife died, maybe he lost, and it's like, holy crap, like you're right, spot on, because obviously we know of the real Helen and what all went down with Locke there, and it's kind of that replacement, if you will. Greg, what are your thoughts on Helen?
The show kind of sets you up for that, though, like to think that way, because like Jake said, he thought the wife had died. He's in a wheelchair for the last 4 years. Maybe it has something to do with that. Like maybe they had a car accident, he killed his wife or something drinking.
Yeah.
Like maybe he was a colonel in the military or something. And it's just a lot of if ands or what's going on.
Yeah.
For sure. No, I mean, but also like that's another kind of part we mentioned over in the podcast, that Locke like really had nobody, and now he's kind of getting, like, we're gonna see coming up here soon, him and Boone have really bonded, and like that's kind of a moment where I feel like it's showing that Locke doesn't really have anybody, to now having a ton of people around him. That it's kind of he had to talk to somebody through answering service.
And just little moments like when Michael tells him, you did a good job, you killed the bull. Like, I just wanted to tell you I appreciate it. And like in the flashback to episode 1, where it's like Jack asking him for help, it's the first time in 4 years that he's not been seen as someone with a disability, and you can just see that joy in him. It's such a fun episode to watch, in the character of Locke.
Yeah, for sure. All right, so now, I mean, I feel like we've talked enough of the spoilers on that. We've brought up the numbers. Did you guys ever notice the numbers, or is it just me?
Okay. Not at this time, no.
Okay. All right. I'm like, did anybody else notice these numbers? Okay. But yes, okay. Big, huge reveal that, of course, Jake has no idea. We're gonna be getting this here shortly too. Is the man in black, Christian Shepherd, aka Jack's dad, is on the island. Why is he on the island? We don't know that he's on the island. We don't know that he's Jack's dad. We don't know any of these things yet. I can't wait for this reveal, because this really brings in a lot for Jack and his character development. So what are your guys' thoughts on seeing Christian? I know you guys were going to bring up something that you wanted to bring up, but
like you mentioned it earlier, him in the suit with the white shoes. It's like I said, this episode is shoe centric. You've got Locke's shoes where they're unbeaten, unworn, unused. He's wearing penny loafers, I believe it was, or something like that, some kind of loafer. He's not wearing his hiking boots that he's already wearing in the series. It goes back to the original. And then you've got the whole thing later on with Christian not having shoes at his funeral because Jack couldn't find them, and Jack gets the shoes from his grandfather. Like, all the details are there, but you don't know they're there. Even on the second watch, you'll start catching them, but you have no idea on the first one.
Yeah.
Do you know what's so funny about this as well? We've spent 4 episodes now with Jake talking about the monster. What is the monster? When are we going to see the monster? Little does Jake know, he's already seen the monster. Yeah. Standing on the beach edge there in the form of Christian Shepherd. This is a huge introduction to, our ultimate endgame big bad, and it's the Man in Black is such a fascinating character. And the last time I watched through Lost, I paid so much attention to the Man in Black, because how he's positioning himself with our candidates, and we'll get into it in the next episode as well. That's very heavily Man in Black centric. But yeah, it's so interesting to watch this guy who's been on this island for God knows how long, seeing these new survivors that have been brought to the island and scoping them out and seeing if maybe there's a loophole here that he can exploit with these people.
Yeah. And I mean, I think that's, it's funny because even like my first time watching it, like, I don't even think when Jake finally realizes like the Man in Black, you know what I mean? I don't even think it took me at least 2 or 3 to actually realize like the importance of this is actually him. Like, he was doing, taking on these characters and things like that. And so it's just kind of, it will be interesting to see if Jake really kind of puts that correlation. Because I know for me, when I first watched it, definitely didn't like, when we see Men in Black, didn't realize that he was doing all that, even though they really spell it out for you that he even says it, you know? And I still just, my brain was not clicking there. So I'm interested to see, Jake's picking up things that I didn't think he'd pick up either. So, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, if he picks up the Man in Black, then he's a witch. There's no way.
I mean, but like Helen, like of all things, like he's right spot on that. What were you saying, Greg?
I want to know y'all's opinion because I was just thinking about shoes again because I'm stuck on shoes. Christian shoes, the white shoes, are they the first shoe that's shown in the series when Jack walks through wakes up in the woods or in the jungle? You know, that one that's on the just hanging there? Is that the same shoe?
I don't think so.
Did my have to go find shoes?
That was my perception on it, where I think the shoes he did bury Christian originally in the white shoes. So I think that white shoe is Christian's shoe, where wherever this coffin has come off the plane, a shoe has ended up in a tree. But how the Man in Black got these were fresh white shoes. Maybe there's like, we'll see Henry Gale get dug up later. Maybe there's somewhere else on the island that the Man in Black just quickly dug up and got some fresh shoes. Mm-hmm. So yeah, or can he? That's the thing with the Man in Black. There's so many questions about how he does how he's able to do the things that he does. Maybe he can just manifest clothes like Piccolo.
He's like, I want to make sure he spots me. Let me put the brightest shoes that I could possibly put on. No,
yeah, I'm gonna freak this guy out.
Right. I mean, it is like it's interesting to see you like mention that, Greg, because like that it definitely could be. But I mean, I think the difference is that shoe in the tree was more of like I don't know the right word, almost kind of maybe like a Chuck Taylor, like, you know what I mean? Like a Converse style, like not high top or anything, but kind of that style versus this is obviously clearly a very tennis shoe type of shoe.
Fair. Okay.
So.
Yeah. We did talk about this during the actual podcast part, but we kind of glossed over it. John Locke and his destiny. Like, we know his destiny for the most part, but Jake doesn't. And I like the fact that it's hitting on the fact that he's there for his destiny this early in the series before you know anything really about him. You just learn that he couldn't walk, and now he can.
Yeah. No, for sure.
I'm hoping Jake starts understanding that and catching on to that because he mentions destiny a lot after this.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I'm curious what Jacob's original plans with Locke were before the Man in Black got into his head, because he clearly was the chosen one to turn it into a Star Wars thing. But yeah, poor Locke, he wasn't as smart as he likes to think he is, I think.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing that I wanted to bring up too, this was like a fun fact that I was going when I was doing the synopsis to get it pulled up for this season. And it has to go here in the spoiler section because it brings up other episodes. But what is so great about Walkabout? We mentioned that it's like one of the best episodes. Like you even said, it's probably going to stay in your top 10 even as the series progresses, Jake. But I have to read this. So IGN ranked Walkabout as the 5th best Lost episode ever, behind The Life and Death of Jeremy Bentham, which we'll get to. Like, I mean, it's funny.
Wow.
The Pilot, Through the Looking Glass, and The Constant.
Wow. Okay. I
feel like that's
my favorite episode of the entire show isn't even in that top 5. Okay.
Yeah. I mean, there's tons of them, but yeah, no. I mean, it also says, that somebody had put in as a comment like skippable. Are you kidding? Like, this episode is not a skippable episode. Like, it's it's not a Apollo and Apollo Live. I can't wait to get to that episode. Jake's gonna be like, why did I waste an hour? But yeah, so I mean, I found that so interesting because I mean, those are all, but the pilot's in here. We talked about how the pilot was like one of the best pilots ever done, and it's 3, or no, I'm sorry, 2. It's 2. So out of all 6 seasons. So I wanted to bring that one up because obviously I can't bring it up to Jake yet because of the episode titles, but also like the very first episode that's ranked there is The Life and Death of Jeremy Bentham, and like again, it's another Locke, so it's kind of crazy that obviously Terry O'Quinn, like we brought up, is really what's selling this here.
Yeah, Terry O'Quinn, Matthew Fox, and Michael Emerson for me are like the pillars of Lost in terms of just incredible acting. But we do also have one more spoiler thing to discuss, Kristin. We also have another mention of something very, interesting, which is the tail section of the plane.
Yeah. It's so funny too because again in this rewatch for me, like I don't think I ever took what Rose was saying to heart. You know what I mean? I never guessed. Like when she even said he's not dead, like they are probably thinking the same thing about us. I'm like, this woman is clearly in denial. But like the more that I watch it, but it's again like Jake's picking up on these things where he's like, I never once thought to even quit. I just thought she's in mourning. She doesn't know what she's saying. Like I didn't even think to be like, oh, could the tail section be out there? Could there be survivors? But you see even Jake kind of his wheels turning. But obviously we know, spoiler alert, that the tailies are a thing. And yes, they are tailies. If you're not a lostie and you don't know that, what are you doing? But they are the tailies. We get a lot of characters that we're going to find out from that section. Bernard, of course, is one, Rose's husband. So she was spot on. I can't wait. The tailies I almost kind of love the tailies and their dynamic a little bit more though than I think this initial group. And I don't know if you guys agree with me, but I kind of like, I know.
No, I don't.
Other than Sawyer. What? I mean, when we get those parts of their, like, they went through a lot. Like, I'm sorry, but like these people are over here like on freaking like the best island ever. They're on a vacation. The tailies went through it. So I don't know. I like their group, I think, in their story a little bit better than I see that this group. Of course, I love this group and I love certain people out of this group. But as far as like to see what they went through to get to where they, finally all come back together, I think is just like night and day. Again, light and dark. And again, it's throughout.
I love the tailies. Like I thought it was a great story. All of the stuff that they had to go through. I just wish they would have flushed it out just a little bit more, a couple episodes, so you could get a little more detail on them before they got with everybody else, and then we had Taily-centric episodes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think I'm on the same wavelength with that, where it's like I love Mr. Echo, one of my favorite characters, Bernard, and his relationship with Rose is obviously fantastic. Anna Lucia, no, Libby's sweet. But yeah, no, I think the Tailies was a really fun story, and that was another thing that was a real discussion point on the message boards after this episode. In fact, because I think no one even really questioned it until Rose said that, and then it's as soon as something's mentioned in the episode, it's like, okay, they've mentioned that for a reason. Maybe there is something there. So when they did introduce the Tailies, I think in that episode, the other 48 days, it's a great episode. But no, I love our core group.
I love them too, but I just like as far as dynamic, there's more depth there, which I agree with Gregg. Is I wish they would have pushed it out a little bit more because there was so. I'm like, man, that I want to see like almost like here's where we can reboot Lost is do it from that side, like you know what I mean, like.
I thought that's what was going on too because it comes in and like don't they come in like the beginning of the second season?
Yeah, episode 6. So
yeah,
early.
But also like even that episode, it's the plane crash. Like you're like, wait, what's happening? Why are we redoing this? But you're realizing it's the tail section. So
well, I just realized why you like the tailies, and I'm not happy about it.
What?
Because what they do to Shannon.
Oh, maybe that was like.
How dare you?
That was in the back of my mind. I was not even thinking that, but yeah. The heroes of the show. That will be on another spoiler section. But yeah, no, I mean, there are a lot of things to unpack in this episode, a lot of spoiler things that are leading up to things. And I can't wait to like when we're getting to those episodes and then the spoilers that are leading even further into the series. It's just like, it's this like tangled web we weave, right?
Mm-hmm. I have one last non-spoiler, non-nothing, almost completely pointless fact about the show.
Okay.
The lady who Claire's ID was reading off of her ID, Wexler, the name was almost Walker.
Interesting.
I'm assuming because it sounded better coming from Claire, but I don't know that for a fact. Wexler just sounds better in her voice, I feel like.
She doesn't fucking think so. Also, like, if we're doing fun facts, Terry O'Quinn had no idea that Locke would be paralyzed until he read the script, so that they also led him to believe. But also, I did read this, and what's crazy is that the director kind of went to everybody and was like, good old Damon. He's like, we're gonna make him paralyzed, and they were like, what? And it was not originally in the script for him to be paralyzed, so he kind of changed that, and they were like, don't know what you're doing here, but let's run with it. They weren't like excited about it, but they let him run with it. And what an amazing, like, that was just spot on. Like, how awesome was that for him to like think, you know what, we're gonna surprise everybody and make him paralyzed. It's crazy.
Yeah, the perfect use of yes and.
Yeah.
Thank God they went with it.
Yeah, for sure. All right, well, I think that is it for this section of After Jake. So with that, we'll be back for another episode on episode 5. So we'll see you guys then. Bye.